Well, just to make sure I'm getting this right. So these eye drops have been contaminated with bacteria that is resistant to antibiotics. So people that put these eye drops in, they're just putting a bacteria into their eye.
Yeah.
And it's, infecting their sinuses, getting into their body. They go to the doctor, they feel like shit, and they're like, oh, yeah, you got a bacteria in here. There's nothing we can do. We don't, antibiotics doesn't help this at all.
Well, I'm not saying that there's nothing that they can do, but I mean, they probably need to get hospitalized. I mean, just giving them a prescription for antibiotics is not going to do it.
It's going to have to.
So it's very, very serious. You need serious medical attention, medical treatment.
Prioritizing profits. Prioritizing
dangerous drug and product cases.
Welcome, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Prioritizing profits with Ben and Sarah Showard. And then I think you have a little catchphrase underneath it, dangerous drugs and medical devices.
Actually, it's dangerous drug and product cases.
Dangerous drug and product cases. I should probably remember that one of these days.
That might be helpful. So what we're focusing on are dangerous drugs and also a variety of products. And actually today, what I wanted to start out with are some product recalls, because there are a couple of pretty critical things that have happened recently. And just from my personal experience, I had to submit a recalled products claim.
And when you say recall products, that's when either there's a malfunction with the product, it just doesn't work very well, it has the potential of harming you. I mean, is it just literally anything? I've heard of car recalls.
Right. So recalls, I mean, and there can be a couple of different, there can be a forced recall or a voluntary recall. It's basically when a product is not performing as expected, and generally when there's a danger to the public. So if something, just doesn't work that well, but it doesn't hurt you, it wouldn't necessarily be the subject of a recall. So, and I think most people hear about the car accidents more, or the automobile cases more often. Something's wrong with the vehicle. Back in the day, there was the exploding gas tanks if you got rear-ended, back when they had the gas tanks in the rear, some pretty crazy things along those lines.
Yeah, I know that there's also been a lot of pollution recalls where they weren't, reaching the EPA levels, the requirements for vehicles in the States. Anyways, going on to recall cases, you recently had a recall situation of your own.
Well, okay, yes, and this is like the least dramatic of the things we're going to talk about today. But my air fryer was recalled.
Really? Mm-hmm. And how did that come about?
Well, that's one of the interesting things that I wanted to touch on is how do you know if a product has been recalled? And there's some various ways that you might know. Some of the really dangerous things you'll see on the news and, the Today Show, Good Morning America, they're going to actually talk about this because, hey, these things can kill you, that sort of thing. Also, when you buy products, there's always those little postcards where you can register your product. And the purpose of that is that you're notifying the company that you now own their product. And so if there is a recall, they have the ability to reach out and tell you about it. I will just admit that I don't think I've ever sent one of those postcards.
Who does that? That's absurd. No, I open up a box, I plug it in, and I throw everything else away. Most of the time, the directions too. I'm lost. I'm figuring it out on my own.
Exactly. So that's not the best way. Although there probably are people out there. We won't say anything bad about them, but who have the time and energy and actually are responsible enough to do that. Anyway, the way that I found out actually was I had ordered the product from Amazon, and Amazon notified me. And the issue with the air fryers, in case anybody has one, it's the Cosori. And but it is actually relatively serious because due to some wiring issues, it can actually overheat, it can catch fire. There were a number of situations where it actually started fires in people's kitchens. I didn't see any indication that somebody had, that there had been any deaths involved, anything like that, but there had been some, some burn injuries and that sort of thing. And it's usually a relatively, simple process, although I have to say if you're not really IT savvy, I had to take pictures of the front of the thing, the side of the thing, the bottom of the thing, find the lot number, and then you actually had to cut the cord and show a picture showing that the cord had been cut, because they're not going to give you a new one if you're not proving for darn sure that you're not using the old one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. And so did they just sent you a new one? They didn't refund you or didn't give you any like bonus fee for issues and problems or anything like that?
No, I mean, they can handle them different ways. I mean, this recall, I think there was an option if you wanted to order a different product, you could. And, air fryers were quite, the rage during lockdown. And that's when I got mine. And in fact, I actually got one for a friend as a gift, and I just had to notify her because she wouldn't maybe be on the radar even for Amazon.
Yeah.
So it would be terrible if my gift burned her house down. So
that would be a pretty shitty gift.
The gift that just keeps on giving. And then we could get into like homeowners and insurance issues, which we definitely won't go there.
And
so.
do recalls make up for a reasonable portion of mass tort cases, or is that something that you consistently look for, or is that something that's just kind of every once in a while there would be that diamond in a rough recall case?
Well, most products don't get recalled. Back in the days of the not that there aren't still some, but the artificial hip cases, the metal on metal, those were actually recalled. But more,
and that's in your body. I mean, that's the process of returning. That's a lot more complicated.
It's also easier to track down the people because they know exactly who they sliced into and implanted a hip into. But more often than not, in these mass tort cases, the company is not acknowledging that there's a problem. They deny all the way till the end. I mean, even when you settle the case, they'll say in the release, we are not admitting that there is any problem with our product. We still don't think there is, but as in an effort to avoid litigation, blah, 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 we're going to pay you this money. So more often than not, there's not an actual recall. The recall is it's great in a mass tort because that's like almost an admission. Yeah, they're saying, yes, there's definitely something wrong with this. So that takes you past that whole liability stage of trying to prove the problem. They've admitted it.
Yeah.
So those are kind of a home run cases.
Even if recalls kind of exist, they aren't admitted to. It's not defined as a recall because the company's never recalling it. They're never admitting that there's something wrong with it.
Well, in the cases where they don't recall it, then there's no admission. Once they recall, they're saying yes that there's.
We fucked up. This has gone down the shitter. We're sorry.
Well, they usually don't word it that way.
No.
They hardly ever.
Honestly, I would feel better if I was personally hurt by any of their products and they're like, hey, look, guys, we dropped the ball. Okay. We shit the sheets a little bit. It's our bad, our fuck up. We got you. I would feel better from that than like a very, lawyer crafted statement.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Hey, we shit the sheets. Our bad. Hey, it's all right.
What do we owe you? What happens? We're going to compensate you fairly for what happened.
Just tap them up. Hey, next time.
Hey, well, I mean, I would hope, and it would be great if more manufacturers took that position. We can only keep our fingers crossed. And in the meantime, as attorneys, we have to keep them on their toes and call them out on these things and prove that there's problems with them.
Yeah, and with the air fryer, I mean, I guess anything with food recalls can be kind of scary, but you mentioned the hips, how there's a recall, and then I know there's other devices or I think any type of recall where it's something that is in your body or you're putting in your body is even scarier than these type of, your car's getting a recall called or your air fryer, or your TV, something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of them are like, what I see a lot of, and I'm on that email list, so I get these notifications when anything's recalled, and like, a gazillion times there's some food because there's undeclared tree nuts maybe included or something like that. I mean, which can be serious if you have an allergy.
Come on, come on.
All right.
Tree nut allergy, a little overrated. Kind of a call for attention, in my opinion. I don't know.
Oh boy, here we go. Anyway, so I mean, things get recalled that in that actually, I mean, there's potential for a serious issue there, but a lot of times it's not. It's just like they didn't disclose the accurate amount of something that's not dangerous. So there are some pretty trivial recalls, but then there's some big ones. And one of them that I wanted to touch on today is a recall. Well, actually, two of them affect children and babies. And one of them is a weighted blanket. So weighted blankets have become quite the rage, and I guess they're very
Yeah.
calming and that sort of thing.
I could use one of those.
You don't have one of those?
No, so I have Bruno, my dog. He's my
Yeah.
weighted blanket.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and he's pretty solid.
Nah, he flops right on top of me. I can't move him even if I tried.
Yeah. Well, so weighted blankets, they got super popular, and you can get them all over the place. The one that's being recalled is a brand called Pillowfort, and it is a Pillowfort. And it was actually sold in Target, and we all love our Target.
Big Target fan.
Definitely. In fact, I can recall many times going into Target with Bruno.
Yeah.
So the problem with these, though, is that they actually can cause suffocation, and 2 children so far have actually been killed.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, really scary stuff. And again, if you bought this product and you didn't send in that little card, they wouldn't be contacting you directly. I haven't seen this on, on any of the big news shows. It may have come out, but again, it comes out. It's like this, flash of the pan. It's one thing, a couple of seconds, one day, and if you didn't catch it, you don't know. And obviously, we want to take the best possible care of our children, and there's so many issues with children and sleeping and not suffocating this way, that way. Anyway, so it's pretty serious. If you have one of these pillows, Pillowfort weighted blanket sold by Target. Both the Consumer Product Safety Commission and Target are saying if you have this product, don't use it. You can absolutely return it for a refund. They usually cost about $40. Again, that's the least of the worries. The big thing is taking care of your child, making sure that this child is not left alone with this product. They're actually able to open the covering and get inside, and literally 2 children have died as a result.
Well, so I'm a little bit confused about this because this is a weighted blanket, so it's meant to be heavy, right? You want to feel almost like a hugging pressure on you when you're in it. And these kids that are they newborns? Are they infants? Is this like 3 or 4-year-olds that are just like, oh, I'm tired, let me throw this blanket on, and then they're suffocating in this sleep? What age group and how is this happening?
Well, so the details haven't been disclosed about the 2 children that have died. I couldn't track anything down on the specifics about that. I don't know if there's a lawsuit out there yet, but very likely will be, especially because now that there's kind of an admission that there is a dangerous aspect to this product. I would imagine, again, it's going to be the very young children who are not able to move the blanket off of them, or once they get inside that covering, that could be problematic.
And the dangerous aspect is it's just too weighted, too heavy.
Well, it allows them to get kind of inside, and then there's the weight aspect.
Okay.
So
it's unpredictability of the weight aspect.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, again, any kind of weighted. There's so many issues with children and sleeping, and I can't imagine you'd want to. I mean, right now, babies, they're not even supposed to have any blankets.
Yeah.
And so a weighted blanket seems doubly, triply, whatever, dangerous. And so I'm assuming that these are not used on infants, but definitely young children.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Is it's really tough for products like this, where a weighted blanket, it's a weighted blanket. Unless it's blowing up and it's heated or something like that, it's hard to make it say like, okay, this is very clearly causing these major problems. If a parent's just putting a very heavy blanket on an infant, like it is that the blanket's full? Not necessarily, but if it's just normal kids are crawling inside and then not being able to get out, then that's different.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's probably one of the difficult parts, because like you said, there isn't details on those death cases. You don't know if there's any lawsuit coming out, and so the future, like what's coming up, is kind of unknown. I mean, at least now it looks like they're doing some sort of recall or saying you can return. No,
it's been recalled, and you definitely can get a refund. And I think that to get in a little more detail, I mean, a weighted blanket potentially could be dangerous just in and of itself, but if it's just a blanket, it can be presumably pushed off. But again, the covering, there's an open covering that people are getting inside to it and then getting stuck.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little, presumably the safer way to do that would be a non-removable covering, or, it does not have
So it's like a
opening.
sandwich. It's like a little, like a burrito almost, that people, they're throwing their kids in and then they're stuck in between. Yeah, like a hot dog.
Yeah, so not a great design, clearly recalled. If you have these products, and we'll put up a graphic giving some more information on that, but you can return it for a refund. If your child has been injured, obviously you might want to reach out to an attorney, but really the key is get rid of these things, don't use them. let's not get injured.
And is there like a website that you can go in and just type in a product that you have or that you might have concerns about and see if it's under any recall?
Yeah. Actually, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, you can go right on there. And in fact, you can just, if you want to just look at categories, child products, you can spend all day. Because again, there's a gazillion of them and some of them are just such minor little things that are never really going to cause an injury. But then some of them are these big, scary things. And this is one of the big, scary things. And likewise, the next thing the next one that's, again, a very recent recall and involving children, our Fisher-Price Rock and Play sleepers. Those have been recalled. And on the weighted blankets, there's only about 200,000 of those out there. It's a lot. But on these, there's 4.7 million out there.
Jesus.
Yeah. And, and again, very scary. The problem is that the children are like rolling over from their backs onto their stomachs. They're not restrained in these products. And they know of about 100 deaths.
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And these were sold online, and so they're all over the country. They were sold at Walmart, Target, Amazon, and these actually have been recalled. Well, actually, as of January 9th, it's actually illegal to sell or distribute this product. Right. I mean, once it's recalled. And it's kind of like with the air fryer. I mean, literally you have to show a picture of you with the cord cut showing that it's unusable. But if anybody who has these, again, don't let your child sleep in them. And also, again, as to the notification process, a lot of people buy baby products used because, you use them for a few months.
Or it's a baby shower, and it's a gift. And then what? The gifter gets the notification, or they have to keep an eye out and then let that person know?
Presumably, if the package is sealed, that card that you could send in would be like the gift recipient.
Yeah, but who's sending in that card? I think the only way someone finds out about a recall reasonably this day and age is from Amazon, right? You order on Amazon and they let everyone know that has gotten that product that it's a recall. Other than that, there's no way that I am going onto the user consumer website and looking up the headset that I just got to see if there's any recalls. It's difficult. That's the difficult part, is that it's like almost unrealistic because of how many things that we have, and I'm sure just how many possibilities of recalls that there are, to keep up to date and to be updated on what's going on.
That's one of the things we're here to do, talk about some of these scary, serious products. Yeah. So, and again, just we will put up a graphic with some information, hopefully, who to contact. But again, all of these products, you can certainly get your money back. Other things like, for example, with the air fryer, they'll just replace it with the new one that has, where they have resolved the issues and the danger. If
you have damages, it's worthwhile to reach out to a lawyer or someone, right? For the example of the kids that, it's unknown the details around it, or if there is a lawsuit happening, but it's still in their best interest to at least reach out and see what's going on. Yeah,
it never hurts. Again, if you've suffered no injury, for example, I'm not calling any attorney about my
air fryer.
My air fryer.
Yeah.
I have been without the ability to fry by air for like a week now.
I don't know how you manage.
I'll just be honest. The thing had been sitting there. I was kind of using it as like a shelf.
Yeah.
At this point, I hadn't used it recently.
Uber Eats has come in clutch this week, I'm sure, with no air fryer.
Well, actually, one other recall, and this is a big litigation as well. It's a recall that has now spurned a litigation. And again, this is something that's super scary. There are eye drops that have been recalled. It's called EzraCare Artificial Tears. And these things, usually you think an eye drop's not going to be particularly dangerous product, but they've actually been contaminated. And it's an antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So actually what they call like a superbug.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so once you get infected with this thing...
You're fucked. Antibiotics don't do anything.
They laugh. They chuckle.
Yeah.
Let's try that again.
They curl up.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So, but it's really scary. And so people have lost vision as a result, and there's actually been a death because, these things get absorbed into your eye, into your, into your sinuses. Yeah, and so you can actually become septic. Where your entire, you have this infection, raging throughout your body. And so that there actually has been a death. And again, these are things that can be bought online. So they're all over the country. I think that so far, and there have been lawsuits filed on these. let's see. It looks like
Well, just to make sure I'm getting this right. So these eye drops have been contaminated with bacteria that is resistant to antibiotics. So people that put these eye drops in, they're just putting a bacteria into their eye.
yeah.
And it's, infecting their sinuses, getting into their body. They go to the doctor, they feel like shit, and they're like, oh, yeah, you got a bacteria in here. There's nothing we can do. We don't, antibiotics doesn't help this at all.
Well, I'm not saying that there's nothing that they can do, but I mean,
Okay,
they probably
yeah.
need to get hospitalized. I mean, just giving them a prescription for antibiotics
Yeah.
is not going to do it.
It's gonna have
so it's
to-
very, very serious. You need serious medical attention, medical treatment,
Jesus.
and you got to take this seriously. And like I said, I mean, there's already one death that we know of, and they're all over the country, and they have been recalled. And again, how do you know? How do you know if you're using these things? I'll tell you, when I saw this, I ran up and I get dry eyes, and so I have eye drops all over the place. I have it in my travel bag. I have it on my bedside table. I have it at the ranch. I have them in my car sometimes, And so I'm like, holy shit! I need to look at all of these and make sure that I don't have this product.
And how does that even happen that it gets contaminated with a bacteria like that? Like, is it intentional that they didn't realize what they were putting in there, or it just kind of slipped, a vial with a skull and crossbones just kind of falls off a desk into the eye
move
drop?
on.
Yeah, exactly. Into the eye drop basket.
No. I mean, it usually has to do with lack of sanitary procedures or, at the plant. And so there's different, this happens sometimes you'll see where a certain batch or lot are recalled when they realize that they may have been contaminated. So I don't certainly think that this was an intentional thing or some sort of, terrorist act or anything.
That would be a good terrorist act, honestly. I mean,
We can't see. Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything like that. I mean, negligence, and it was interesting too how that they finally discovered that it was coming from the eye drops, but they did confirm that, tested the batches. Yes, there's a problem, and so now all of the ones that are out there. We're certainly trying to notify the public about that. But yeah, check out your eye drops. Again, we'll have some information on that. If you need more information, you're always welcome to get in touch with us directly as well.
And I mean, first, I just want to clarify too. They're eye drops. I cannot stand this artificial. What's artificial tears? What does that even mean?
That is eye drops.
Artificial tears? No, I just want to drop some shit in my eyes. I don't want to fake cry. That's what I'm thinking when I hear artificial tears. But when there are cases like this, you got the air fryer, which you got to cut the cord, no big deal. But then this seems so much more extreme. A simple new air fryer is not going to bring my vision back. What does the process look like for those individuals?
Well, so definitely you could and probably should pursue legal action. The company has basically admitted that yes, this product has been contaminated. So yeah, if you have injuries, they did not follow proper safety procedures within the manufacturing plant. That's why it happened. It was their negligence. So you're pretty much past that. If you can establish that you had the product, that it falls within the parameters of the products that were contaminated, you're past the liability. But then the question is, what are your damages? Some people have, as I said, the bad ones are blindness or death. But certainly other people have had issues and have had to undergo medical treatment and luckily haven't lost their sight. Again, they should be compensated for their medical expenses, lost time from work, pain and suffering, all of those things that we look at in legal actions.
Yeah, I mean, that's awful. This is something you just buy online and then go to work the next day, and all of a sudden you have a antibiotic-resistant bacteria, superbug going through your system.
With its cape crusading.
And so do you get consistent updates on these type of cases and whatnot? When these happen, even if, like you said, with those cases, there's only 2 kids that died, but you find out about them pretty quickly. I'm assuming there's an email list or some.
Well, yes, you can sign up for notifications, and because of the nature of my business, I am signed up for those notifications. And then I'm also just on a lot of listservs that address these types of things, because that's obviously been the focus of my career for a long time now, are dangerous products and drugs. And so I'm constantly getting bombarded, actually, with all of the various ones. And again, most of them are relatively minor. If you want to get a whole lot more emails, feel free to go to the Consumer Product Safety Commission and sign up for alerts about everything.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, you can narrow it down to what you want to hear about.
I think we'll probably throw some links into the description of just different places people can maybe check out and see if there are any recall on products that they own or that they use. But overall, I mean, we'll probably be going over just recent recalls that'll be coming up throughout the weeks in the podcast. So definitely keep an eye out for any information there. I think it's probably a good time to move on to cases, updates on cases.
So a significant update is the hair straightener cases. We've talked about those pretty extensively. And those cases have now been consolidated into a multi-district litigation, which is a very good thing from our perspective, from the plaintiff's perspective. And that has been consolidated in the Northern District of Illinois, which is in Chicago. That is a very favorable jurisdiction from our perspective. And those cases are moving forward. They are, generally when it first gets consolidated, there aren't a ton of cases because people kind of wait until the consolidation. The process is much more streamlined, much more efficient. Once it gets consolidated, you can do this direct filing. And so you see, once it gets consolidated, you see cases coming in. And so that's going to get moving pretty quickly now. One other update is just a kind of a time issue. Revlon is in bankruptcy, and there are some timelines if the product that you used was a Revlon product that are much shorter than the other products. So really, any product you used, it's critical that you act timely. That if you believe that you may have suffered damage as a result of these products, don't wait. Contact an attorney right away. There may be timelines that you're not aware of that are ticking away. And, it's so frustrating when you have a client and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, clearly you have had a case. Clearly this problem was related to this product. And I'm so sorry, but the time is run and I cannot help you. I mean, I can't, the many times I've had to tell people that, and it's just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And for the Revlon, I think, we should definitely go into the products, but I do want to go back to the hair straightener real quick, because you mentioned the consolidation and how the process of kind of getting cases in is a lot easier once the consolidation happens. And I know that leading up to a case, right, you have an idea of kind of how widespread it is, that it is a good case, that there's going to be enough people affected by it that it will be, worth pursuing. When that consolidation happens, is that kind of also an eye-opening time to see how many cases and just how many people are affected? Because I'm assuming a lot of people are kind of holding back submitting their cases until that time. So once that consolidation hits, is that kind of just, all the lawyers are like, okay, wow, this is just how big this case is going to be?
Yes and no. There's always, for example, we were just at American Association for Justice convention, the AAJ convention in Phoenix. And so before it's consolidated, the attorneys are communicating, if you're involved in these organizations. And so people kind of have an idea. At the start, one of the big questions is how many people are going to be affected. And so you look at, first of all, what's the prevalence of the usage of the product? And again, this is a product that's, been used for many years and quite extensively, within certain population groups. And then the next question is, what percentage of people who use the product are going to have the problem? And you don't know for sure about that. But from the studies, again, it was, multiplying the incidence of getting uterine cancer. So we know that while that's not a really common cancer, now that's going to be basically doubled or by 40%. So, we don't know exact numbers. And again, that's not going to be, not everybody's going to be affected, but the people, the longer they use the product, the more likely. And it's been out there a long time. So we think there are a lot of people. But then to the yes part of that is, again, yes, people are accumulating cases. They are signing clients up, but we don't know unless they are sharing that information how many are out there. Then consolidation happens and the cases get filed. Now, even once a consolidation happens, oftentimes people will hold off on filing until you get closer to the statute of limitations or the individual deadline for that case to be filed. And that kind of goes back and forth. Sometimes people file them much earlier because, they want to get their cases in. There's no reason necessarily to wait. Sometimes people hold off because there's a filing fee and, maybe it would settle before you file. That's rare if ever. But yeah, you see the floodgates kind of open, I guess, is the answer. You see a whole lot more.
No, that makes sense. I would assume, especially in mass tort, everyone kind of needs to be on the same page and understand that it is, a high potential case. And most people are communicating and they're saying, we're receiving these cases, we're seeing this, and telling everyone else because it helps everyone else. But, I'd also assume there's probably a few people out in Ohio not going to any of these conventions, just stockpiling cases, not saying a word, and then boom, on this day, they just let it all rip. And so, I'm assuming there's a few people like that. And in
any business, there's the people who are cooperative, there's the people who aren't cooperative. There's
lone wolves.
They're the people who want to, And then there's kind of some infighting and some interesting things along those lines. But, to that also, in some of these litigations where there are so many cases, and for example, the hernia mesh would be an example, where there's just, thousands and thousands and thousands of cases. On those cases, sometimes it's tactically advantageous to file at a certain time. And so, leadership might reach out and say, hey, we're trying to really put the pressure on for settlement. If you have cases that are unfiled and you're holding on to them, please file them now.
And then everyone puts them in and it puts the pressure on?
Yeah, the people who participate. Some of them are still going to do their own thing, whatever. But then there's other times when they're saying, look, they're feeling overwhelmed. They want to talk settlement. So if you have cases where the statute's not coming up, hold off on filing now. So there, again, if you're cooperating, there are tactics, I guess. There's times when it makes sense to file, times when it makes sense to maybe hold back on the ones that don't have to be filed yet. And again, if there is a settlement that's coming up and they're in discussions and they say, we will include unfiled cases, then again, it may not be much, maybe $400, but you don't have to incur that cost on behalf of your client, if we're in active settlement negotiations. Yeah.
And that's interesting. I never realized or thought about it that it's almost this massive nationwide movement of lawyers, against this in this same direction. And, like anything this size, you're going to get a few lone wolves that don't listen and
nutbags. We call
they do whatever they want. But it is like the cool idea of just kind of this council that can rally, everyone together to either put their cases in or to hold off, depending on what's best for the case and obviously the clients of everyone there.
Absolutely. And it really goes back to the whole purpose and the benefits of the mass tort system.
Yeah.
And that is that, if each attorney who had one case or two cases is trying to fight this, huge corporation, the odds of that being successful are slim to none. You really have to have, the financial resources, the staffing resources, all of that. And, but when we all work together as a group, we're actually able to take on these corporations. And again, it's a great system. No system is perfect, but, it usually, it's certainly, I've always been a strong proponent of putting my cases into the multi-district litigation. There are some times where you might have some outlier case and you don't want it to go through the global settlement, or you really want to try to, be this star trying this case outside of it.
Yeah.
There are people like that. But more often than not, it's a benefit to the plaintiff to be included, even if maybe if at the end they need to step out of the settlement. And I've had cases where that was the best option for the client at that point. But yeah, generally working together and working as a group, that's how we bring these companies to the settlement table. It's how we bring these companies to justice, if you will, really.
Yeah.
Make them take responsibility for their actions and the injuries that they've caused.
I was going to say, justice or maybe even retribution for the victims here. And kind of speaking on that, I know that you mentioned after this hair relaxer case, there was something that was a little bit more time sensitive. that people needed to get their cases in for.
Right. So one of the things we talked about the last time were specifically the products, and we'll put up a graphic about those. But the primary products that are involved, the manufacturers are L'Oreal, again, very big company. Their products are Optimum and a product called Dark and Lovely. Revlon. Now, Revlon is the one that is in bankruptcy, and so there's a really tight schedule. That product is called Cream of Nature. There's also another product called African Pride by Godrichson Holdings. And then another, and this one just really pisses me off a lot too, a company called Strength of Nature, and their product is called Just For Me. And the one that just makes me so mad, because this is the one that's specifically directed towards children and teaching these kids at this young age, you're not okay how you are, you're not okay naturally, your hair's bad, you need to straighten it, you need to look more white or something. It's just, that one makes me crazy. And then there are some other smaller companies out there. But the key here is that, it's really critical to get in touch with somebody sooner rather than later. And more often than not, somebody who's using hair straighteners is not always using one particular one. Mm-hmm. I mean, there may be some brand allegiance. And then sometimes people are also going to salons. And so they maybe, when they go to the salon, they use this product. When they're doing it at home, they use another product. Hey, this one's on sale this time. Let's try that out, see how it is. So there's a lot of cases where there's what we call mixed use. Mm-hmm. And again, and you can include multiple defendants. When you file these cases, I check off, yes, I use this one and this one and this one, not that one. Mm-hmm. So, and if there's one that is in bankruptcy and you have to file a notice of claim, it's a different process. You got to get that in. So that's critical. Best thing you can do, again, is talk to somebody sooner rather than later. The statute of limitations, the deadlines can be complicated, can be confusing, but if you talk to an attorney, and maybe, bam, we jump on it right now, we get it filed, or maybe, you can relax and we have a little more time. I shouldn't say relax in this context.
And so that was Revlon. So maybe we can throw up some pictures of their specific products. So if anyone listening is using those, then it's a little bit more time sensitive to reach out.
Yeah, and that's the Cream of Nature.
The Cream of Nature, yeah. Not a big fan of that name either. Cream of Nature.
A lot of these names are pretty, yeah, they just rub me the wrong way. I don't know why.
They make me a little uncomfortable. Don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But okay, so definitely more time sensitive on that. But hair relaxer as a whole, if you aren't, using the Cream of Nature, then you still have time. I mean, obviously, it's always good to reach out sooner rather than later. But those, because they're not bankrupt, it's not as time sensitive.
That's one issue. But again, the timing, if you were diagnosed, depending on how long ago you were diagnosed, there still could be time limitations. If there was some doctor who seemed more in the know than others and told you, years ago, and again, different states have different statutes of limitations, but, like say in Arizona, 2 years, if a doctor had mentioned to you, hey, I think it's your hair relaxer, and they mentioned that 3 years ago, whew, but in all likelihood, most people's 2 years would start to run from when this really came out, when when the studies came out and when it was talked about in the news. And so when you could have reasonably known that your injuries were related to the product.
Yeah.
But again, it's very complicated. All the states are different. But just don't sit on this. It's so frustrating. And I can't tell you how many times I've had clients say, oh gosh, I saw your commercials for years. And, I finally got around to calling you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but if you just would have called me last year,
Yeah, no, it's difficult. And I think even what makes it even more difficult or confusing is, like you said, it's different state by state, depending on where you are listening to this, the requirements and regulations could be completely different. And even though, one mass tort lawyer can take cases from all over the country, which ones actually qualify are different based on the state. And that is insane.
Well, I don't know if it's insane.
Not insane. But it's I guess it's more just like overwhelming from the consumer perspective. From the client perspective, it's really overwhelming thinking about how just because of where I live, my case can just not qualify.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that comes up in a lot of contexts, like the abortion issue and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I mean, the states' rights and yeah. So, but again, as a mass, if you practice in this area of mass torts, you're used to handling cases throughout the United States, and you basically know what the statute of limitations are for the various states and that sort of situation. There's all kinds of charts and all of that, but yeah, again, just don't hesitate. The worst thing, what you waste a phone call, you waste a chat, something like that. You find out you don't have a case, fine. But it's just so much worse if you find out you did have a case.
And we're nice. We got Danny on the phone, so she's very personable, and you can hop on and talk to her any day. Probably a good time to switch into other cases that we're also looking at right now.
Yeah. So, well, one of the cases that I wanted to talk to and talk about today, and this is not one where there's like hundreds of thousands of cases out there, but for the people who do have a case, it's pretty serious. And this is a very new medication called Tepezza, and it's a new drug for what's called thyroid eye disease, or TED, and that is a condition that generally accompanies an overactive thyroid or Graves' disease. And so not a ton of people have it, although I will say I have it. In fact, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease after giving birth to you, so I may even have you to thank for part of that. But
I do what I can.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, so one of the symptoms that can occur with this disease, and it does not happen to everybody, but it is the thyroid eye disease. And it has a number of symptoms, but the thing that people always notice is that the eyeballs tend to bulge. And people feel very self-conscious about it. And I think like the famous person like Barbara Bush had that condition. And it's just a very noticeable thing when you see it. And the other problems, I mean, obviously it doesn't look good. It's that's a big issue. But you also have dryness, you have inflammation, double vision, sometimes blurred vision, sensitivity to light, and it can actually affect your vision. Most people, it's more of a cosmetic thing and it doesn't affect your vision, but it can. And so this medication has come out, and wow, I mean, if that can save your sight, holy crap, this is a great thing.
Yeah.
More people than not are using it for the cosmetic effect. And I totally get that, because believe me, I always look. Every time I saw my endocrinologist, are my eyes bulging, are my eyeballs bulging? He's like, I don't know. Tell me, are they?
Terrifying, yeah.
Well, it is scary. It is scary. So anyway, this medication has come out. If it's affecting your vision, obviously that's something you want to deal with. And cosmetically, I'm all about, hey, I mean, I want to look good too. I get that. But it's a very expensive drug, and it turns out that it's also very risky. It's actually causing deafness.
Deafness.
Yes, causing hearing loss.
Putting it, and it's a cream. I'm assuming cream you put on your eyes, eye drops?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's an infusion.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. You go through a course of eight infusions every 3 weeks. Crazy expensive. I mean, just guess how much it costs for a course of...
$15K?
More?
25?
Way more?
Really? 75?
$120,000.
Per infusion?
No, for the treatment.
Oh.
For the treatment.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
That's
120. Some people can buy houses for that.
No, that is still insane, 100%. But also, I've experience with infusions. I know infusions.
Yeah.
No matter what infusion it is, it's gonna be disgustingly absurdly overpriced. And there's no infusion. You look at the price and you're like, okay, I'm happy.
I'll pay cash.
Yeah.
I'll pay cash. Yeah. So it's a big money maker.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah, so it's a big moneymaker, and it's really getting pitched. But the risks of hearing loss are not being adequately addressed.
Wow.
Yeah, and so again, the people need to know the real risks so that they can make a decision about whether they want to take that risk or not. The other thing that gets thrown in here too about this drug is that, okay, I'm like, well, my eyes are going to look better. I might have hearing loss. But here's the kicker. Maybe your eyes look better, but even if they start looking better, more often than not, within 1 year, the symptoms come back.
Oh.
And then you've got to go in for new treatment. And again, it's a cumulative thing. The more treatments you have, the more likely you are to have hearing loss. So, let's be honest about this. It's not just, okay, you're going to go through this one infusion, maybe you lose a little hearing, but your eyes look great. No, your eyes are going to start, the problem's coming back, and now you're going to have to go in for the treatment again, and the odds of you having hearing loss are going higher and higher and higher. Yeah, so this is all kind of getting flushed out. Again, there's not like a gazillion of these cases, but if you have this condition, of course this is going to sound appealing, and you need to know that you might have hearing loss.
And this, I'm so curious about this because I think that this brings up a really important point, is because, like you mentioned, everyone needs to know what the possible side effects are for whatever medication is. And if you willingly take it and you recognize, however terrible the side effects are, if you're aware of them and you recognize it and accept it, then that's fine. But I think, it almost does change it if it's something like losing your hearing, losing your eyesight, something like that, or even, physical appearance compared to risks of cancer or risks of those type of, not easily noticeable diseases. Like for me, if I'm looking through, if I find out that I have a chance of losing my eyesight and my hearing, I would, and even if it's much more minimal of a chance, I would be much more terrified of taking a drug that risks that than cancer, even if it's much higher, like double or triple the odds of me like losing my eyesight.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the cancer is an interesting one because, basically everything in the world, it feels like causes cancer
Everything
at
gives
some
you
point.
cancer. Everything's terrible, but like, I don't want to lose my hearing. I don't want to lose my eyesight. Those are the things that I care the most about.
Well, it's immediate and tangible kind of, as opposed to increasing a risk you already have of developing a horrible disease that you don't want. But again, the original risks are probably kind of low, and now even if you double it, arguably that's still a relatively small risk. And again, there are going to be people who probably feel the opposite of you and who are like,
100%,
holy
yeah.
crap, if anything could at all increase my risk of cancer, heck, no way.
I'd rather lose my eyes than die.
Right,
Other way around.
But then again, that goes exactly to the point that let the individual make a decision, because we're all different and we all have different priorities and different other things going on. And if somebody has a life expectancy of another 5 years, their choices might be completely different than somebody who thinks they've got another 80 years.
And I guess my question was, how does it affect, or is there any change to the case when the risk or the way that people are being affected is much more tangible or almost noticeable? Like for if someone's losing their complete vision compared to getting cancer in 10 years, like what does that look like for the case process, for the reactions for people when they find out about it? Maybe the less tangible aspects of the case. If that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. I guess that, they're all different. And the type of cancer, if you develop a cancer that is very treatable and that isn't likely to kill you, that's very different than if you get a cancer that's always fatal and you're going to die a miserable death. And then, of course, with any case, whether it's a mass tort case, different people's vision is worth different amounts. If somebody is a pilot, and that's how they make their living, and now their vision is affected, even minimally, they could lose their entire career.
Yeah.
If somebody's a ballerina and she loses a foot, this is a different thing. It's very, very individual, and just how we value our various senses makes a big difference. And that's one of the things in any case. You look at the damages to that person. How did it affect your life?
Yeah.
If somebody could never jog again, there are other people who'll be like, shit, I was never going to jog. I'm a couch potato. I have no desire to jog.
Yeah, that's what's so insane to me is that, it's not insane, but I guess it's something that you don't really think about, is that, you look at these drugs or these devices and the terrible things that they're causing to, clients or to the victims of the cases. And even though it's like the same thing, thinking about how it affects each individual person and how that, I guess, response or the payback of it, the funds that you get in return is different based off that. Like you said, if someone's a pilot and they lose their eyesight, that's gonna affect them a lot more, and rightfully so, probably deserve more money than someone that doesn't affect their entire livelihood and how they support their family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of the good things about the system and about the whole tort system is that basically the purpose is to, put you back to where you were. I mean, obviously you can't, but to compensate you for what your actual losses are, not for what they could have been or, what they are for somebody else. And in the mass tort system as well, there are in these global settlements, they're all a little bit different, but oftentimes there are different levels, different categories, depending on the severity of the injury. Mm-hmm. And even then within those categories, looking at how it affected that individual person. Mm-hmm. And this came up a lot, with the vaginal mesh cases. And there were people who, literally they could not have intercourse. They couldn't have sexual relations anymore. I had a client who was in her early 40s, and I had many clients who were in their 80s. And their perspective, although I did have one 80-year-old lady who told me some pretty crazy stories about her sex life, which is quite impressive. But but I mean, it's very different. I mean, the same injury, I can't do this, but for this person, who's maybe single or in a marriage or something, versus this person who's widowed and 85, the value there is different.
Yeah, and I mean the challenge of as impossible as this task is, putting a monetary value to, someone losing out on having sexual experiences like that at their 40s, like putting monetary value on that, absolutely insane and impossible. But at least it's something.
Yeah.
And I did want to touch on a point you said with the 80-year-old and unique stories. I swear I've heard this. I don't know if this is a rumor, but if STDs are just incredibly prevalent at retirement homes.
Oh my gosh. Oh yes.
If there's just like massive outbreaks of just chlamydia throughout like one retirement home because everyone is just in a pile.
Are you referencing the villages in Florida?
I don't know what I'm referencing. I just know for a fact I have a voice in my head that's telling me that STDs are rampant in these retirement.
It's true. We were just in Tubac at a festival the other day, and we were chatting with this couple who was at a retirement community here, and I just jokingly said, "Oh yeah, I hear there's like wild orgies and things," and he's like, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe," and I was like, oh shit, I didn't mean to open that can of worms here. But, and then there was like all these signals. In fact, this was a funny one.
Oh, the pineapple.
Did I tell you that, or did you know
No,
that?
I know about that. Yeah, on like cruises. If you go on a cruise and you walk around a cruise and you see doors with pineapples on them, that means they're swingers.
I'm like so in shock because what they said is like at the grocery store, if you put a pineapple in, the top part of your cart.
Apparently, it's like, it's just pineapples in general. Like, if you go to a house and they just have a bunch of pineapple ornaments in front of the house, and it's like, okay, they're swingers, They're down with it.
Oh my God. Okay, so I just have to say I'm kind of traumatized, so I have to get rid of this. But when we were in Germany, I was cold and I bought a sweatshirt and it has all these pineapples on it. And it's like, but it's in German. So now I think I'm going to look like a German swing. Oh my God. I think I'm going to wear that on the next podcast.
It's a real risk. It is.
I'm so traumatized that my son knows the pineapple thing.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of like a common, if you're on Reddit or anything like
common.
That, there's no pineapples. I've seen literally on Reddit front page, it's like a picture of like, oh, I was on a cruise walking down the hall, know what these guys are into, and it's just a door full of pineapple magnets on it. It's like, okay, these guys are fucking down.
It's like one pineapple, or you have like multiple pineapples.
You got to throw multiple so they know it's not an accident, right? It's not a coincidence that there's a pineapple. No, we are a pineapple couple.
Who in the hell ever? Who in the hell like has pineapples as a decoration? Even just one? I don't know. I've learned something new.
And I'm sure this happens at retirement homes too. Is you walk past doors and there's probably a few pineapples hanging out outside of them. They got a few swinger clubs.
But what if, so this really sucks because it discriminates. It's people who do not live in high citrus productive areas. I mean, if you're in Canada, how do you, to get a pineapple, if you can get one, is going to be really expensive.
Maybe they just throw out a bucket of maple syrup outside their door and they got their own
have
side.
different
Yeah, exactly. You never know.
All right, we're going down a rabbit hole here. It's a little disturbing that I'm having this discussion with my son.
I think we're coming to a close here. I don't know if
Thank
you
God.
want to go over any general info or just kind of updates for people before we close out the show.
Well, generally we'll talk about some general question about mass torts, but I think we kind of hit on that with the recalls and that sort of thing. What I do want to talk about just briefly is kind of giving a heads up on some of the things we might talk about next week. And the one thing I really want to focus on is what I think is going to be a really huge case, and that is the link between Tylenol, acetaminophen, and autism. So in vitro exposure to Tylenol, so pregnant mothers who use Tylenol, huge increase in the risk of autism in their children. And that's just so many angles of that. So I would like to talk about that in a little bit more detail next week. And then also in the meantime, just make sure that people know how to reach out to us with any questions. If there's anything that you would like us to address on the podcast, we would love to do that. We have some questions and we'll probably address one of those next week. But certainly let us know what you want us to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And, follow us on all of our social media, Showered Law on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. But yeah, next week, I think that'll be a really interesting conversation topic. Pregnant women taking Tylenol and it possibly having connections of increasing odds of autism in their kids. Insanely interesting, and I think that'll be a good show. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening today. We will catch you next week and hope you have a fantastic week.